The moving truck was still running when that cop cruiser pulled up. Not even 5 minutes after I'd set foot on my family's lake cabin, my so-called inheritance, all I had left of Uncle Jasper. There she was. Perfectly styled hair, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, phone glued to her ear, heels clicking so loud on the dock you'd think she was calling in a SWAT team. I heard her before I saw her. "Yes, officer. He's here. The military vagrant I told you about." I just stood there, hand on the tailgate, diesel exhaust hanging heavy in the air. I watched neighbors drifting onto their porches, pretending to sweep or check the mail. Every single one of them rubbernecking for the drama. Gravel popped under the cop's boots as he made his way over. He looked at me with that familiar, "let's just get this over with" face. The kind of look I'd seen before, just never pointed my way. "Sir, I need you to vacate the premises immediately. There's a restraining order." That right there? It stings. There's no good way to explain what it's like, getting told to leave your own home, with an entire lakefront community watching. I stood there humiliated, while my childhood's only safe place got carved up and handed over to some HOA queen with a god complex. I know what you're thinking. What would you do if someone tried to steal your family's whole legacy out from under you? I'd love to hear it, honestly. Go ahead and think on that for a minute. I bet you've got your own HOA horror stories, right? My name's Brock Steele, and after 22 years wearing the uniform, taking orders, getting sand everywhere you can imagine, I thought I'd earned a quiet life. A soft landing. Maybe fix a few old boats, breathe some pine air, call it a day. I was wrong. Dead wrong. Some battles follow you home. That cabin? Been in my family since 1965. My Uncle Jasper, who looked like he was carved out of actual rock, built it himself. The kind of man who could break a stubborn bolt loose with just a look. Summers, there were everything to me. That old dock, the creak of wood under your feet, learning to tie knots I'd actually end up using in Afghanistan. War stories, pipe tobacco, the whole place smelled like him. When he died last spring, he left the place to me. Said I was the only one stubborn enough to keep it standing. Even now I can still smell his old tackle box, bit of mildew, splash of WD-40, a hint of cut grass and sawdust. I'd planned out this whole retirement fantasy. Read all the books I hauled through 3 deployments. Fix up boats for folks. Maybe even get into bird watching, God help me. But Willowbrook Lake wasn't the place Jasper knew anymore. Starting around Y2K, developers sniffed out the hills and started plopping down $500,000 McMansions like Legos. You know the kind. All columns and 3-car garages. The old families, Jasper's crowd, were getting boxed in cabin by cabin. And then she arrived. Delilah Thornbridge. Name just sounds expensive, right? She hit Willowbrook like a hurricane in pearls. White Mercedes. Matching luggage. Heels that probably cost more than my entire workbench. She married Rex Thornbridge, a contractor who'd lucked out building subdivisions when the market was hot, and together they bought the biggest slice of lakefront money could get. 6 months after she showed up, Delilah was already HOA president, promising to elevate community standards. Let me tell you, when the sunlight started slanting through the dusty cabin windows that afternoon, I knew there was a storm brewing. You can just feel it sometimes. When the air gets heavy, but it isn't about weather. The first warning shot came a week before my move-in date. I was hauling boxes, cussing about the humidity, when the mailman handed me a letter. Certified. Heavy. The envelope alone screamed lawyer money. Gold-embossed return address. Willowbrook Lake Homeowners Association. I should have known. Dear Mr. Steele, it started, dripping with that artificial sweetness. Your property has been identified as non-compliant with current community aesthetic standards. Before occupancy can be approved, the following mandatory improvements must be completed. I still have that letter somewhere. The list was a mile long. New roof, new siding, pro landscaping, dock repairs, windows, the works. Stuff that'd cost at least 15 grand if you hired anyone half decent. Which, for the record, Jasper kept up himself for over 50 years. He may have had opinions about siding colors, but the man knew how to work a level. I called the number on the letter. Willowbrook Lake HOA, this is Delilah. Even her voice sounded like she was smiling with all her teeth. Ma'am, this is Broxdale. I just got. Oh yes, the military property. I know. She cut me off like I was spam. I'm sure you understand, Mr. Steele, that we simply cannot allow substandard properties to drag down our investment value. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in one of those veteran housing developments across town. You know that feeling when someone acts like you're dirt. Yeah. The cabin's floor creaked under me. Jasper's voice in my head. These weren't violations. This was history. Hand-hewn beams, a fireplace built from rocks he dragged out of the lake, a screen porch where 3 generations cleaned their fish. That kind of thing doesn't show up on an HOA checklist. But Delilah was firm. The improvements are non-negotiable. Failure to complete them within 30 days will result in legal action to prevent occupancy. I do hope you'll make the right choice for everyone involved. Click. Line dead. I just stood there in that workshop, surrounded by tools older than I was, and realized this fight wasn't about siding or docks. She wanted to erase the past, sweep it out to make room for her vision. You ever feel like someone's trying to delete your whole family from the record books? Delilah didn't waste time either. 3 days after our call, a process server knocked on my apartment door. Envelope thick enough to stop a bullet. Emergency injunction. Immediate cease and desist. She'd hired Blackstone and Associates, the kind of firm where just calling them costs you a week's pay. But here's the thing about 22 years in uniform. You learn that the enemy's first attack is almost always for show. All noise, no substance. So, while Delilah was busy spending money on lawyers, I spent my morning at the county courthouse. Just me, a notebook, and the patience Jasper taught me with a fishing pole in hand. The courthouse basement stank of old paper and tired dreams. The clerk looked like she'd seen every sort of trouble pass through that building since the Cold War. Can I help you, honey? Yes, ma'am. I need to look up property deeds and HOA records for Willowbrook Lake. 4 hours later, I hit gold. Uncle Jasper's original deed, dated 1965. No restrictions, no covenants, no mention of any HOA, because Willowbrook Lake HOA didn't even exist until 2003. That's 38 years after Jasper bought the land. If you ever find yourself in a property fight, remember this. Original deed rights almost always trump any rules invented later. But that wasn't the real treasure. Down in those dusty boxes, I found something that made my stomach turn. Rex Thornbridge's construction company, awarded an $80,000 contract by the HOA board in 2022. No other bids. Just a fat check signed by his wife, our community-minded HOA president. That courthouse coffee tasted like acid after that. It hit me. I wasn't just dealing with a pushy neighbor. I was up against organized corruption. Maybe you've been there. Maybe you haven't. But it's the kind of thing that makes your hands shake. Finding what you need, dear. The clerk was peeking over the counter, probably wondering why I was still there after lunchtime. More than I bargained for, I said, stuffing my copy machine change into my pocket. That's where I met Mavis Kettleworth. She was sitting in the parking lot, fighting her walker out of an ancient Honda Civic, keys dangling from her wrist. She was 78 and looked like she'd been wrestling bureaucrats since before color TV. You're Jasper's boy, she said, not asking, just knowing. Yes, ma'am. Delilah Thornbridge giving you trouble. I just nodded, and she grinned, a sound like gravel in a tin bucket. Honey, I was a paralegal for 43 years. I know every dirty trick in this county. I know what she's up to. Mavis walked me through the way developers weaponize HOAs. Raise property values, push up taxes, squeeze out families who've lived there for generations. Your uncle was a founding member. she said, adjusting her glasses. That deed is gold, but you'll need help navigating the courts. I asked what kind of help. She just winked. The free kind. Some of us remember when this lake was about family, not investment portfolios. That night, I sat at Jasper's old table, his Purple Heart medal in the center, surrounded by photocopied records and legal pads full of notes. It was a war map, plain and simple. Numbers didn't lie. Delilah had gotten a restraining order to keep me from moving in. Court hearing set for 3 weeks out. 3 weeks of motel bills. That kind of money would burn through my savings faster than diesel through a Humvee. But now I had ammo. Here's a tip for anyone tangled up with an HOA. Always check your deed's date against the HOA's formation. Older deeds often have ironclad rights. Don't just take someone's word for it. Read the actual document. Right about then, my phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Heard you're causing trouble for important people. Might want to reconsider. A friend. Look, I've been threatened by actual terrorists. Some HOA's mystery texter isn't exactly high on my list of worries. But it did tell me something. Delilah was spooked enough to start hiding behind burner phones. I took a screenshot, saved it, dropped it in my evidence folder. This was going to be a long war. Out on the lake, a loon called. I stood on the porch, not quite feeling like I belonged, but not feeling beaten either. Jasper used to say, patience catches more fish than anger. I repeated that to myself as I locked up and drove back to the world's worst motel. 2 weeks into exile at the Lakeview extended stay. There's no Lakeview, by the way, and extended stay is code for nobody wants to be here. Delilah played her next card. Flyers showed up in every mailbox, thick as cardboard, ink so fancy it probably cost more than my first car. Emergency community meeting. I went, of course. The community center smelled like old lasagna and pine sol. Residents shuffled in, folding chairs squeaking, nobody looking at each other. Delilah took center stage, laptop glowing, smile dialed to 11. Thank you all for coming, she purred. We're facing a crisis that threatens everything we've built together. You ever watch someone spin a nothing burger into a full-blown crisis? That was Delilah. PowerPoint slides about investment value, aesthetic standards, security initiatives. She made my cabin sound like the Cuban Missile Crisis. Then she dropped the bomb. Recent developments have shown we need enhanced protection. I'm proposing a special assessment of $25,000 per property to fund critical improvements. You could feel the room stop breathing. Harold Finch, the treasurer, started sweating bullets. Me? I'd come in full dress uniform. Sometimes you use what you have. Let folks remember you're not just the guy in the cabin. When it was time for questions, I stood up. Before we vote, I'd like to request inspection of the HOA's financial records. Property owners have that right. Delilah's smile flickered just for a second. Mr. Steele, you're not yet an official resident. Mavis cut her off, her walker tapping the floor like a judge's gavel. Any property owner within the HOA boundary has legal right to inspect records. Robert's Rules. Look it up. Delilah scrambled. Rex's company, it turned out, would be handling all security upgrades. Funny how that works. Harold, the treasurer, stammered something about system updates. Translation. They'd been playing games with the money. Here's another nugget for you. You have the legal right to inspect HOA records. Do it in writing. Give 10 days notice. If they refuse, that's grounds for legal action. After the meeting, a couple residents pulled me aside, whispering like we were planning a jailbreak. That was brave, Dorothy Milhouse said, retired teacher, still looked like she could silence a room with just a look. Frank Morrison chimed in. Hands like baseball, mitts from a life of hard work. Rex's crew show up, make noise, then disappear. We can't ever tell what they actually did. The third was Janet Polk. Delilah came by last month very friendly. Said investors would pay above market if we'd sell. She wants the whole shoreline. You ever have that feeling where 100 puzzle pieces suddenly snapped together. That was me. This wasn't about paint colors or landscaping. Delilah wanted control of the lake. My cabin was the last piece. That night back at the motel, I laid out every scrap of evidence, legal documents, threatening texts, copies of Rex's contracts, right there on the bedspread. I was fighting an organized racket with nothing but a military pension and some free legal help from Mavis. But here's the thing. I saw it clear as day. Delilah's control wasn't as solid as she thought. People were starting to question. The cracks were showing. My phone buzzed again. Nice uniform tonight. Too bad it won't help you when the bank comes calling. A friend. I screenshotted it, filed it away, and tried to get some sleep. That was the night I realized. Sometimes the only way to survive is to keep documenting, keep pushing, and never ever back down. Monday morning, I drove by the cabin for my daily check-in, just trying to feel like I still belonged there. Right away, I spotted an official county vehicle parked in the drive. Clipboard guy, khaki pants, sunglasses, the whole county inspector uniform. He looked about as happy to be there as I was to see him. I knew it wasn't a coincidence. The porch smelled like Rex's cigars, like a warning left hanging in the air. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step back," the inspector said. His name tag read Gary Millstone. He shook my hand like he wanted to get it over with fast. "Anonymous complaint about structural integrity," he read off his form. "Serious violation, sir." Anonymous? Sure. I'd bet my last paycheck it was Delilah, probably right after she peeled out in her Mercedes. Gary started listing violations. Unsafe dock pilings, hand-built by Jasper, still holding strong after decades of storms. Non-compliant electrical, rewired and approved just 2 years ago. Questionable foundation integrity, built by local masons. Nothing but solid stone. The punchline? He handed me a stack of repair estimates. Over 40 grand. And, surprise, surprise, Rex's business card was clipped to the top. "You know," Gary said, all fake-friendly, "Mrs. Thornbridge mentioned she might be willing to buy the property as is. Could save you a lot of trouble. $50,000 for a place easily worth 3 times that." The kind of insult that sits with you, low in your gut. I left before I lost my temper. I drove straight to the VA office. I needed options. That's where I met Linda Martinez, a caseworker who talked like she'd seen every flavor of broken veteran roll through those doors. "Mr. Steele, you might qualify for a few things you're not using," she said, spreading forms out like playing cards. Disabled vet property tax exemptions, VA home improvement loans, 0%, and this, historical preservation assistance. I perked up at that last one. Turns out Jasper's cabin, built by a Korean War vet using old-school methods, could be protected. If it got historical designation, the HOA couldn't force modernizations or tear-downs. Suddenly, there was hope. Quick tip here. If you've got an old property with real history, check your local preservation office before you pay a dime on forced improvements. That night, my phone rang. Mavis's voice crackled with excitement. "Honey, you better get over here. Dottie Millhouse found something in her late husband's papers. Might just turn the tide." Dottie's kitchen smelled like coffee and victory. She spread out 3 years' worth of HOA meeting minutes, handwritten notes, photocopied invoices. Her late husband had documented everything. Harold kept records, Dottie explained. He attended every meeting, kept copies of all the financials, recorded every weird decision. It's all here. What I saw was enough to make a CPA weep. 17 contracts, over 3 years, all awarded to Rex's company. Nearly $300,000 in roadwork, landscaping, emergency maintenance. Most of it never actually done. But the clincher was an old cassette tape. Harold had left his phone on speaker while recording minutes at a meeting. The tape caught Delilah's voice, plain as day. "Harold, I need you to adjust the books before the annual meeting. Move the Rex payments to different categories. I'll make it worth your while, 10 grand cash." Harold, quiet as ever, tried to protest. "Delilah, It's not illegal if nobody finds out. Think about your wife's medical bills. That was it. Proof of fraud and outright bribery, recorded on tape. We didn't have time to savor the win. Outside, headlights swung into Jasper's drive. Through Dottie's window, we saw Gary's county truck, followed by a flatbed with Rex's crew. They dragged hoses and shovels toward the waterline. 20 minutes later, both trucks left. My phone buzzed Gary again. Noticed additional water damage during follow-up inspection. Afraid this raises the estimate significantly. Dottie's coffee mug hit the table. They're sabotaging you. She was right. It wasn't enough to block me legally. They were actively damaging the property to make it unlivable. But this time, they'd gone too far. I'd learned from Jasper. Sometimes you let the fish bite the hook themselves. Dottie pulled out a folder, yellowed, soft at the edges. Harold found this with your uncle's papers when he helped clear the place last spring. We've been holding it, didn't know if it was important. It was the original community charter from 1965, signed by the 12 founding families. There it was in the fine print. Section 7, Water Rights, negotiated for the founding families and their heirs. No future board, HOA, or developer could alter lake access or approve major changes without unanimous consent from all 12 family representatives. It wasn't just about my little cabin. Jasper and the others had locked in legal protection decades ago. No development, no marina, nothing without my signature. Delilah needed me, the troublemaking veteran. That's why she was trying to force me out. Mavis grinned, leaning in. How much do you think they've spent already? Permits, studies. Land it's all worthless without your consent. My phone buzzed again, Rex this time. Heard you're being stubborn about some paperwork. Bad things happen to stubborn people. Desperate. You can smell desperation sometimes. Dottie looked scared. Harold always thought they might, your uncle's heart attack. He was worried. I tried to keep calm. I'd felt the same chills, thinking about Jasper living alone, standing in the way of $1 million project. We can use this, I said quietly, folding the charter. They don't know we have it. That gives us time. What kind of time? Mavis asked. The kind where hunters become the hunted. Out on Dottie's porch, I looked across Willowbrook Lake. Delilah was probably pouring herself a glass of Chardonnay, still thinking she'd already won. She hadn't. Not anymore. The war room was Mavis's kitchen table, piled high with folders, maps, a laptop, coffee, and sugar cookies. Our team was unlikely. A 78-year-old retired paralegal, a retired schoolteacher with documentation skills, and, when I called in a favor, a retired chief warrant officer, Maria Santos. Maria drove in from 2 counties over, fresh from 3 tours. She sat down, flipped through the evidence, and started grinning. Let me get this straight. HOA president funnels contracts to her husband, threatens and bribes people, then tries to run you out because she needs your property rights. That's the short version, I said. Maria had the look of someone who'd seen a lot, but corruption always got her blood up. We're not just fighting a greedy HOA, she said. We're going to dismantle a criminal operation. We divided up the plan. Legal front. File complaints with the state attorney general. Request a forensic audit of HOA finances. Invoke historical preservation laws to block any forced changes. Notify the environmental board about suspicious development activity. Financial front. Apply for VA home improvement loan and property tax breaks. Map out all the shell companies tied to Rex and Delilah. Track investor money. Community front. Hold a heritage day for founding families. Invite local media. Get neighbors talking out in the open. Quiet support is good, public support is better. Intelligence front. Install trail cameras around the cabin. Document every crew visit, every new inspection. Keep building a timeline. Store every file in secure cloud storage. Maria handled the digital stuff. They're going to get more aggressive when they realize you're organizing, she warned. Let them, I said, feeling Jasper's old metal in my pocket. Every move they make gives us more evidence. By the end of the week, we'd recruited 2 more allies. Luther Blackwood, 74, Quality Control Inspector. Jasper's fishing buddy. Luther had years' worth of photos, shoddy construction, empty work sites, code violations. He kept everything. Then Harold Finch showed up, shaking but determined. "I can't do this anymore," he said, eyes darting. "Delilah's threatening my wife's medication if I don't help. But I can't keep falsifying the books." We promised him protection. Santos gave him a digital recorder disguised as a hearing aid. "Just a couple more weeks," she said. "Hang on." Our timeline: 2 weeks of evidence gathering, then a public showdown. The only way to break Delilah's spell over the community was to lay it all out in public, with the cops and media watching. Dottie asked, "You think it'll work?" Maria smiled, pure confidence. "We've got the law, the evidence, and the people. We're fighting for something real, for home." You can't bottle the feeling in that kitchen. Hope, nerves, righteous anger. It was the first time in months I'd felt something other than fear. The next morning, at 6 a.m. sharp, the knock came on my motel room door. Private investigator, bad suit, breath like day-old coffee. "Mr. Steele, conducting a background check for the HOA. Any anger management incidents in your military record?" I almost laughed. "Feel free to FOIA my service record," I said. "Have a great day." I shut the door, locked it. But the message was clear. Delilah was hunting for dirt. She wasn't going to find it. My record was clean. That afternoon, Harold called, voice shaking. They offered me 10 grand to destroy the records. Cash. Brown envelope. "Did you get on tape?" Maria asked. "Every word." But it wasn't just bribery anymore. Rex threatened Harold's wife's prescriptions, implying the pharmacy might lose her file if he didn't cooperate. It was all getting darker. They'd crossed from greedy to outright criminal. That night, someone shattered every original window in Jasper's cabin. Hand-blown glass, gone in a mess of sparkling shards across the porch. Spray paint, military scum, ran down the siding. But Santos had installed trail cams. We had Rex on video, plain as day, laughing as he tossed a rock through the window. "Got him," Maria said, watching the footage. The sound of glass crunching under my boots made my hands shake. This wasn't just vandalism anymore. This was personal. This was desecration. Another tip: if you ever have property disputes, trail cameras are your best friend. Night vision, cloud upload, timestamps. That's evidence no judge can ignore. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. "How's your beauty sleep, soldier boy?" Shame about those windows. Accidents happen to people who don't quit. Another threat. I just saved it. Evidence pile was growing. But the worst came the next day. A call from the VA Medical Center. "Mr. Steele, we received anonymous calls about your mental health. Concerns you might be a danger to yourself or others. We need you to come in for an evaluation. Weaponizing suicide prevention protocols. If you know, that accusation follows you forever." "Happy to come in," I replied, with my attorney and all documentation showing this is part of a property dispute. The call ended quick after that. But I was shaking. They were trying to ruin me, not just as a neighbor, but as a veteran, as a person. That night, I sat on Mavis's porch, staring at the dark water. Santos joined me, silent for a long while. "They're scared," she said finally. "Scared people make stupid, desperate moves." She was right. And so was Dottie, who called with more bad news. 3 more neighbors had their tires slashed, and someone left notes on doors warning folks not to support our heritage event. They were terrorizing the whole community now. Time to call the police chief. Chief Maxwell Henderson picked up the phone on the second ring. He didn't sound surprised to hear from me. Maybe the town grapevine worked faster than I realized, or maybe he'd been waiting for this. "Mr. Steele," he said, that deep, measured voice of his. "Been hearing your name a lot. Some folks say you're stirring up trouble. Others say you're trying to stop it. Which is it? I told him I had evidence of racketeering, embezzlement, threats against seniors, everything but a smoking gun, and we might have that too. I asked for a sit-down, just me and the file. No lawyers, no audience. He agreed. His office smelled like black coffee and old paperwork. Commendations lined one wall, a couple faded photos of him in uniform on the other. You could tell this guy believed in doing things the right way. I set down my folder, financial records, copies of threatening texts, photos of the vandalism, the tape of Delilah bribing Harold, the chartered Jasper signed back in '65. Chief Henderson looked through everything slowly. The more he read, the tighter his jaw got. By the time he listened to Delilah's voice on that cassette, he just leaned back, pinched the bridge of his nose, and said, "This isn't an HOA problem, Mr. Steele. This is organized crime. RICO territory." I let that sink in. He started making calls, state attorney general, county prosecutors, the FBI field office downstate. By the time I left, there was a plan brewing. But Delilah wasn't done. Not by a long shot. That same day, a certified letter landed at every house on the lake. Emergency HOA meeting in 48 hours. The topic? Immediate removal of dangerous individual from community property. The language was slick, talk of recent incidents, mental health concerns, and harassment of residents. It was a character assassination in legalese. Maria called me. She'd found Facebook pages full of fake posts under my name, doctored photos, weird rants, evidence of me being an extremist. Classic online smear tactics. "I can track the IPs," Maria said, fingers already flying on her laptop. "These accounts are pros. Might be someone Delilah hired." I was halfway numb at this point, but it still burned. They weren't just after my property. They wanted to erase my reputation, my life. And then Luther called, voice shaking. They came to my house. Rex and 2 other guys. Said I should rethink who I'm siding with. Said bad things happen to old men who don't mind their business. He'd recorded the whole thing. 43 years in quality control had taught him. Always get it on tape. That night, nobody slept much. We knew the showdown was coming, but we didn't know how ugly it'd get. The community center was packed. Seats in rows, Delilah's supporters up front, the rest of us in the back. Air thick, with nervous sweat and cleaning chemicals. Delilah opened with the same plastic smile, her voice soft but sharp as a knife. "We have to act in the best interests of Willowbrook Lake," she said, glancing at the deputies near the doors. "Recent threats to our safety can't be ignored." She started the PowerPoint, photos of my cabin at night, ominous music, fake screenshots. She even had a letter from a VA counselor, one she must have coached, talking about how transition to civilian life can be difficult for some veterans. Then she called for a vote to have me banned from the community, permanently. But before anyone could raise a hand, Dottie Milhouse stood up, straight-backed and steady. "Before we vote," she said, "the community deserves to hear some recordings Harold Finch provided. Recordings of Mrs. Thornbridge threatening neighbors and offering bribes to our treasurer." Delilah's face turned the color of paste. "You can't, those are private conversations." Mavis didn't miss a beat. "Threatening and bribing are criminal acts. They don't get privacy." Harold, trembling but determined, plugged his phone into the mic system. Delilah's voice filled the room. The cash offer. The threats about medical bills. A hush fell. Then, for the first time all night, you could feel the tide shift. That's when the door opened and Chief Henderson strode in. 2 deputies, plus a woman with a federal badge. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but some things are more important than a community meeting." Delilah tried to protest. "This is a private matter, Chief. Not when there's evidence of racketeering, intimidation, and federal crimes." He cut her off. The woman stepped forward. "Agent Sarah Chun, FBI Financial Crimes. We've been following a pattern of fraud in HOAs across the region. Mr. Steele's evidence has been extremely helpful. I stood, let my uniform and my word speak. I didn't ask for this. I just wanted to live in peace. But when bullies threaten my family and my neighbors, I'm not standing down. Murmurs grew. Luther, battered but unbroken, played the recording of Rex's threat. Accidents happen to old men who don't mind their business. Agent Chen outlined it. Forged documents, no-bid contracts, years of theft and threats. Chief Henderson made it official. Rex Thornbridge, you're under arrest for vandalism, criminal intimidation, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Deputies cuffed him right there. Delilah, desperate, shrieked about harassment and just trying to improve the community. Agent Chen shook her head. Embezzling funds and terrorizing seniors isn't community improvement. It's a crime. Chief Henderson saluted me, a gesture I won't forget. On behalf of Willowbrook Lake and in honor of your uncle, thank you for standing up. People applauded. A few cried. I felt Jasper's hand on my shoulder, even if it was just my own memory. Delilah was led away in cuffs. The spell was broken. After months of hell, I could finally breathe. Saturday morning, I woke up in the cabin. Fresh coffee, pine needles, loons on the water, volunteers fixing up the damage. For the first time in months, it actually felt like home again. That Saturday, the whole lakefront felt like it was breathing out for the first time in a year. Neighbors I hadn't seen since spring wandered out with paint cans, tool belts, casseroles. Luther Blackwood, who swore he was retired, ended up directing parking and fixing the flagpole in the front yard. Mavis organized everyone like a general. Dottie made sure nobody left hungry. Jasper's boy shouldn't have to do this alone, Dottie said, handing me a paintbrush. I'd never been much good at painting, but nobody cared. By sunset, the porch was fixed, the siding scrubbed, and every single window replaced. Even the old workshop got cleaned out for the first time since Jasper's knees went bad. It wasn't just about fixing damage. People were shaking off fear, sharing stories, realizing they weren't alone, and they never had been. For every bad actor like Delilah, there were a dozen good folks who'd just been waiting for someone else to speak up first. The fallout was fast. With Rex and Delilah out, the old HOA board dissolved. Forensic accountants dug through every financial record. Turns out Rex's construction empire was a shell game. Loans on top of loans, contracts that never got finished, money bouncing between accounts until it vanished. He ended up with a 3-year federal sentence and a long list of restitution payments to make. Delilah got 5 years, plus a permanent ban from ever serving on an HOA board or managing property in the state again. I heard she tried to fight it, but the paper trail was just too thick. Agent Chen stopped by to thank me before the trial. She said, "You'd be surprised how many of these HOA fraud cases go unreported. Most folks just sell and move away. You stuck it out." I told her it wasn't courage. Not really. I just ran out of places to run. The community rebuilt. The new HOA board was all neighbors this time, Luther, Dorothy, and even young Janet Polk. Every meeting open, every dollar accounted for, every contract required 3 bids, no exceptions. For the first time in a decade, people actually volunteered for committee work. I got nominated to lead the Lake Heritage Subcommittee, which just means I make coffee and remind everyone to check their water filters. Funny how that works. When folks stop being afraid, they start showing up. We started new traditions. A Veterans Day fishing derby in Uncle Jasper's name, with all the proceeds going to military families. The old workshop became a sort of community center, place to fix a lawnmower, trade stories, help out the new family who just bought the old Miller place down the road. Maria Santos's daughter got the first Uncle Jasper Memorial Scholarship. She wants to study environmental law, said she wants to keep lakes like ours safe for the next generation. Chief Henderson dropped by every so often, checking in, sometimes just sitting with me on the porch, drinking coffee and watching the water. He told me the state attorney general had used our case as an example, passed a new law making it easier for veterans and seniors to challenge HOA harassment. But life didn't go back to normal exactly. Some scars you carry. I still jump when the phone rings late at night. Sometimes, when the wind rattles the windows, I remember the spray paint and the threats. Some of the old-timers moved away, finally ready to let someone else carry the torch. But there were new faces, too. Young families looking for a safe place to raise their kids. Retirees from the city, hoping for peace and community. Property values stabilized, not because of aesthetic standards or fancy mailboxes, but because people actually wanted to live here again. Jasper's purple heart sits on the mantel, right next to a photo of the lake at sunrise. I talk to him sometimes, out loud like a crazy person. We did it, old man. Your place is safe. For now. Every now and then I get letters from folks in other towns, veterans, widows, just regular folks, asking how we fought back. I tell them the truth. Document everything. Find your allies. Don't try to do it alone. And remember, the law can move slow, but it does move. Don't give up. Community matters. Heritage matters. If you don't stand up for it, nobody else will. One thing Jasper always said sticks with me more now than ever. Patience catches more fish than noise. Maybe that's why I'm still here. The lake changes with the seasons, but some things stick. The smell of pine and diesel. The sound of kids' laughter rolling across the water. Old-timers arguing over whose chili really belongs at the potluck. The scars from that HOA war haven't disappeared, but they don't sting as sharp. If anything, they remind us how close we came to losing everything that mattered. Every November, folks gather on my porch for the Veterans Day Fishing Derby. People who barely nodded before all this now bring folding chairs, home-baked pies, pictures of their grandkids. Chief Henderson is always there, starter's pistol in hand, making a whole speech about community resilience. It sounds grand, but really, it's just neighbors looking out for each other. That's what we fought for, even if we didn't say it out loud. The workshop's busy again. Luther Blackwood holds Fix-It Saturdays for anybody with a busted chainsaw or a leaky roof. Maria Santos stops by when she's in town, her daughter tagging along, always asking questions about the old days. Dottie and Mavis still run circles around everyone, keeping records, organizing food trains when someone gets sick, making sure nothing slips through the cracks. Some mornings I wake up to the lake, mist curling over the water, and I remember those weeks sleeping in the motel, wondering if I'd ever get home. The anxiety still comes and goes. Sometimes the creak of the dock at night sets my heart racing. Sometimes I worry another Delilah will show up, someone slicker, smarter, with new tricks. But the difference now? I'm not alone. Neighbors come by just to check in. Janet's kids leave drawings on my porch, stick figure boats and big red fish, usually with Brock written underneath. The new folks ask questions, want to know about Jasper, about why there's a purple heart on the mantel, about the old charter, and the night the FBI came to the community meeting. I tell them what I can. I don't sugarcoat the bad stuff. I let them see the paperwork, hear the recordings if they want. I tell them the same thing I tell everyone. Don't let anyone make you feel small in your own home. Document everything. And when you're tired, lean on your neighbors. We're all we've got out here. There are still fights over boat slip assignments, the annual weed control, whether the new playground should have a slide or monkey bars. That's community for you. Messy, loud, sometimes frustrating, but always worth it. A couple months back, I found a letter in the mailbox. State seal on the envelope. Inside, a certificate from the Attorney General's office, commending Willowbrook Lake for outstanding community resilience in the face of organized harassment and fraud. I laughed, showed it to Maria and Mavis. We hung it up in the workshop, right next to the faded sign Jasper carved years ago. Welcome, don't be a stranger. Sometimes, in the evenings, I sit out on the dock. I watch the sun drop behind the pines, water catching the last light. I think about Jasper, about all those before us who built something with their hands and then watched as the world tried to bulldoze it. We almost lost it, But we didn't. I get a lot of messages these days, folks from all over the country. Some with stories just as wild as mine. Some just need someone to tell them it's not hopeless. I tell them what Jasper told me. Patience. Keep your head. And never back down just because the other side's louder. If you've made it this far, thanks for listening. Maybe you've got your own HOA war story. Or maybe you just like hearing about folks who won't quit. Either way, you're part of this now. That's how it works. You hear a story, you remember, you look out for the next person in line. So yeah, if some HOA bully or developer ever tries to steamroll you, remember Willowbrook Lake. Remember what we did. Ordinary people, outnumbered and underfunded, just refusing to be pushed out. Find your allies, keep your records, stand your ground. You're stronger than you think. And if you ever end up here, don't be a stranger. There's always coffee on the porch, a chair facing the water, and someone willing to listen.